So Ben Dunn, how are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm really good. I'm really good. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
It's an absolute pleasure, and we wanted to talk to you a little bit about this Franck Muller collaboration that we've done as well, because your website was one of the first to champion these watches, and I know that you had a wonderful black dial 3-counter watch that you actually sold as well. But I want to talk a little bit about how I discovered your website. So your website to me represents really the future of curated watch retail. And I love this incredible combination of wonderfully researched articles that you have in combination with, your phenomenal taste in watches, right? And I discovered your website because I was researching this extremely long article that I wrote on the Audemars Piguet perpetual calendar. And as I was researching the reference 5548, which was launched in 1978, and was actually the watch that saved Audemars Piguet, and not the Royal Oak, although the Royal Oak certainly helped, I landed on your article and I was like, oh my God, this is a treasure trove of information. I'm going to steal it all. No, okay, so I would say that it was a great opportunity to have such beautifully researched material for me to work from, and I did mention it in the article when I wrote it because I just thought it deserved a shout out. But how did you create Watch Brothers London? How did you come up with this idea of having just awesome storytelling and articles and education along with really cool watches?
Sure. Well, firstly, thank you so much for the kind words and intro. Watch Brothers London, although it's got brothers in the name, it is actually just myself. It's a long story of why it's called Brothers. It started as a side thing, to be honest, and it started with the article. So I think the AP QP article was one of the first, alongside the Royal Oak mid-size 14790. I started writing those because I was just seeing a lot of watches listed as the wrong reference, or people buying thinking they had something else, and it was confusing out there. And I didn't come up with all that info myself. There's a lot of really knowledgeable collectors who helped me, such as Watches and Guinness on Instagram, and also Chaka70. Those guys contributed heavily, and it's very much like an ongoing document. So even yesterday, I was editing a little bit to add a bit more about the skeletons. I've actually got one on now, and it's one of the early ones, but that reference wasn't mentioned. So it's always developing, and great to hear from people when they show me stuff I haven't seen. But it's mainly just the sales corner side of it is just my taste. So the Franck Muller was a brilliant example of this. I just saw it on Instagram actually, and just fell in love with it. I just thought this thing is crazy cool. It looks great. Everything I look for in a watch, it has. I'm very much aesthetic focused. I have like a design background. So for me, how a watch looks and how it makes you feel is the number one and two thing. And then the movement, again, is up there. But for me, it's the aesthetic and feel was the first part. And that watch really had it. And I was lucky enough to get that watch from a collector in Italy just before the Brexit chaos happened as well. So I was like looking at the tracking, like, come on, before end of the year when all the borders started closing. And luckily it got here just in time. And then, I opened the box and it was even better than expected. And then I remember trying to shoot it. It was actually really tough because it had a gloss dial. And I just shoot everything on my iPhone, even now. And it was really hard to capture that watch. And I remember doing like one or two takes of it. I miss it. I went to the US and I haven't heard of it since. And it's the only one I've had. And I've always just kept an eye out and really admired other people selling them because they're beautiful watches.
Amazing. Well, again, it's a tribute to your great taste. I mean, when I go to your website, I love the fact that you kind of got to things like the 5548 or the 222 or the King Midas, like a little bit before everyone else, and really helped to sort of shape people's opinions around them. Like yourself, the first time I set eyes on this Franck Muller chronograph reference, well, actually two of them, because there's a 2-counter version with a silver dial that's 36 mm, and then the black dial version with 3 counters, which is 37 mm. I just fell in love with them, right? And I wanted to know more about them. I later discovered from my buddy Nick Rudaz, who's the managing director of Franck Muller, that they were created for an Italian retailer. And I've heard it might be Carlotti, but I'm not 100% sure. But apparently that's the guy. But the watches were just ravishing. They're everything I wanted in a chronograph. I love the applied Breguet numerals. I love the clear reference to the 1940s Patek, like the Tassi Tondi, the 1463. And it was so interesting to me that in the 90s, you had two incredible independent watchmakers, Franck Muller and Roger Dubuis, both making watches that were kind of referencing the 1463. Roger Dubuis with the H40 or Homage, which came out in the late 90s, and then Franck here in the mid 90s with this incredible watch for the Italian market. And then, of course, I wanted one, right? And like yourself, like I was desperately trying to seek out like one in every corner of the earth, and I just couldn't find one. And I think Jeremiah, who you'll meet shortly, was like, why don't you ask Franck Muller if they'll actually make one or two for us, right? So I went to Watchland, and I like kind of humbly begged them, like, would you consider to remake this for us? And they actually said, that's not a bad idea. We actually really interested in this era of our history. But then we started talking about the movement, and the initial idea was to have a automatic movement, which would change the dimensions of the watch altogether.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you would feel about that, but for me, that was like clearly a no-go. I mean, like. So
yeah, I mean the DNA is the movement of this piece, for sure. It's just on that quickly. It's funny because I reached out to you about this watch ages ago, and I was like, can you tell me anything about this? Because I'm trying to write the description. Apart from saying it looks incredible, like what else can we add here? And you were at the time just like, I'm in early talks, and then I got really excited about that. And then now it's here. It seems crazy. It's a full loop that we've got back to it.
Yeah, I mean, what's super interesting is if you look at these two watches, like the H40 from Roger Dubuis and this and this Franck Muller, what we're calling kind of the tribute chronograph. They both reference the same era and probably the same watch, but I think they were created with two very different intentions, right? So if you look at the H40, it's only made in precious metal. It, I think, cost 60 or 70,000 Swiss francs when it was created. It has a Geneva seal, a certificate of chronometer from Besançon, and then the Franck Mullers were, quite a bit less expensive, made in steel, brushed to steel. They were anti-magnetic. Instead of the Lemania 2310, they're using, well, at least in Speedmaster terms, the successor to that watch was the 187. Well, at the time, it 1873, but these are 1874s, right? Yeah. And it's much more of a workhorsey kind of watch, but a really great looking one. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it's got all the striping and finishing as well to match. And that's kind of the bit that was missing for me with the original. Like, you've got this great front, turn it over, and I want to see the back. And I know, like, historically or traditionally, having the closed back is there. But for me, with the design focus, being able to see through and talk about the back and the movement is an extra part of it as well. So that's why I was really, really happy to see that there was both options with the two cases, well, the two case backs.
Yeah, I mean, that was the really entertaining part was finally, because I started to get kind of depressed because once they started to tell me the dimensions of the watch, if we had to put an automatic movement in there, it was just like, wasn't the same thing anymore. And then Jean-Luc Blenat, who's like the product director there, I don't know if he had this up his sleeve the entire time, but he just kind of wandered off, and then he came back with these trays, and I was like, oh, well, what does he have in his hands? And I looked down at them, and he's like, here we have some new old stock Lemania 1874s from the 1990s, right? Which were the exact movement that went into these watches. Would you consider to use these if we refurbished them completely? And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I can't believe you're giving me this opportunity. And then the major question came up, as you had said, was like, so, okay, we understand that Franck's intention of this watch was to make it sporty, water resistant, anti-magnetic, and it actually says anti-magnetic on the dial. Like, what are we going to do about the case back? Because we really want to see this movement. It's just like a time machine movement. And finally, Jean-Luc and Nicholas were like, simple solution. Let's give everyone two case backs. So you've got the sapphire one if you want to like look at this amazing movement, and then you've got the solid one if you want to properly make it anti-magnetic. I kind of feel that everyone's going to buy this watch or these watches and keep the sapphire on, and kind of just keep the solid ones, just kind of a cool thing to have for your desk,
Yeah, and I love the engraving on the solid one as well. It's kind of like it's the message. Here we are, we're recreating it. This is a limited edition, etc. I know it says that on the display case as well, but it's nice to see it fully engraved on the solid case back as well.
Totally. And then with the 30th anniversary Franck Muller logo as well. Okay, then with no further ado, because I know we're sending a couple of these over to you as well, Ben. And we're going to switch over to Jeremiah. So we want to show you the watches because we just got them in, and we would love to get your opinion on them.
Amazing.
Hi, Ben. It's good to meet you. I know, we spoke through through text. We were really hoping we could get the box set to you and you'll be doing the unboxing for us on your end. But unfortunately, that didn't work out. So I'm going to try
it's all good.
On the computer.
Awesome. I didn't realize today was somewhat of a new watch, NWA for me. This is fun. It's early in the day for this. I love it.
So here we go. I'm going to try to angle it to.
Lovely. And the box as well is the same box as the original ones. It looks very similar. It's beautiful.
30th on there.
Or you can check out their watches and show them some individually.
Sure. Okay, I think we'll start with the silver one. And we've been trying to do some research on the availability on the secondary market. And it seems that, dealers like yourself and even the auction houses, it seems like the 3-counter black dial one is a lot more commonly found. I mean, even though the limited edition series was 50 pieces in the 1990s, but you just see these 2-counter silver dial ones. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I've only seen 1 or 2 of the silvery dial come to market. A question on the dial texture. Like, I absolutely love what you've done on these. I haven't actually handled the white one, the old white one. So these new ones, they seem to have like a nice textured finish across both white and black dial. I'd love to know, the process there or the thought behind it.
So we actually examined the original watches under magnification, and actually Franck Muller had the specifications of the dials as well as all the other aspects of the case and movement in their design files. And they were like, you are aware that the majority of the dial is actually what they call grené, or like a sandblasted kind of finish, which you don't really see that much if you're looking at the black dial version, but actually is there.
Oh, I see.
And so then, what we said was, okay, so because I love frosted dials as well, I said, okay, can we enhance all of the different finishes so that they contrast that much more? So I think especially on the silver dial version, which is what I love about this watch so much, you really see all the different contrasted in finishing. So you see the circular brushing where the track is, for the minutes and also for the tachymeter. And then you see this sort of wonderful grené or frosted finish in the center of the dial. And you've got these wonderful applied indexes, the Breguet 12 and 6, and then these dot markers. We actually asked them to also kind of like sex it up a little bit with those. So to make them a little bit more voluptuous and sexy,
Yeah. I was going to say the two-tone effect is stunning, even on camera here, it looks crazy. And I love the size of the numerals. So I was looking at the black dials from the past, and some of them have larger ones, some are smaller numerals. The size is just perfect. Like, the symmetry is beautiful.
Thank you very much. So that's one of the things that we wanted to do, is we wanted to go with the like larger and more exuberant numerals, but like really keep the balance of the dial. And so we also enlarged both of the watches. So from 36 and 37 mm respectively, we went to a uniform 39 mm, which we think is really balanced for today. And actually still, I mean, the size of the movement also still feels very balanced in there too.
It really does.
And then one thing we wanted to do, because these were, obviously inspired by the 1463, and the case maker of that was Francois Bourgel, right? We wanted to add the Tasti Tondi fluted pushers. So, because the original ones were not fluted, so I don't know if I can catch that here, but
no, that's a beautiful detail. I was reading about that this morning, and then looking at the photos of the old one. Yeah, I love the fluted pushers. It's stunning, and the crown's slightly larger as well, is it?
Yeah, larger and flat, because like the original like 1463 crowns as well. So they, I have to say, Franck Muller, basically, it was incredible. They like made an all new case and dial for this watch. It had one person asked me, it's like, well, a question about the pricing, because it's like, hey, it's the same movement that's in Speedmasters. I'm like, yes, but first of all, that movement's no longer available. And these are vintage movements from the 90s. And second of all, imagine a watch manufacturer that would go through the process of making an all new case construction, all new dial crown, pushers, everything to make a watch just because we thought it would be a cool idea. I mean, hats off to Franck Muller. They just crushed it.
Yeah, I mean, it's beautiful. The side profile as well, the way the lugs turn down. I love that.
Yes, and that's very 1463 as well, and it feels on the wrist. And so I just want to show you one kind of oddball watch as well. So when Franck Muller himself heard about this project, he's like, well, if you guys are going to remake my old chronographs, you have to make the chronograph that I'm most famous for. And you have to remake this watch, which is his double-sided chronograph. So it's double-sided because, you've got the chronograph on the front of the watch, the chronograph hand on the front of the watch, but then it travels all the way through, and you have the chronograph hand on the back of the watch as well. So when you start it, the chronograph hand starts to go clockwise, but then when you flip it over, because it's attached to the same pinion, it goes counterclockwise. But it's so easy to read these huge scales as well. And I kind of feel that this was the inspiration for that, the Snoopy when he's in the spaceship. Right?
Yeah. No, definitely. This one is really interesting to me. I'm an absolute sucker for this kind of dial, and you can probably pronounce it better than me. My northern accent, the guilloche style dial, in black is just killer. And the pusher for the Rattrapant. Being in the crown. This is new to this model that you've brought out, or this was from a previous model?
This is how Frank wanted it when he did split-second versions of this as well. What's new for this model is he hasn't done a split-second version of this in the original dimension of this watch, which is 39 mm as well. It got bigger with time, as everything did. But we wanted it this original size. And the most hilarious thing was I was like, hey, Frank, I didn't know you had like the rights to use, Richard Habring's split second, module, because he was the only person that I knew of who had modified, a 7750 to have a split second module. And he's like, no, I didn't. I just made my own up.
Amazing.
That was really cool. Yeah, it's a great watch. I have to say, like, the more I play with it, it's just such a fun watch to play around with. I don't know if you can see it here, but the split, it's really crisp. And then I'll stop it and then reset, and it's just a great watch. So anyway, I know your primary interest is in the Lemania watches, but if you want just to play around with it, we're happy to sell one of those to you as well, just for fun, right?
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, the more I look at that one, the more I get obsessed with it. See, the other two were just similar to what I had previously, but yeah, I'm very much into more complicated pieces these days, like all these QPs, etc., is a big focus.
Absolutely. Well, you did write one of the best articles on QPs as well.
That's too kind. Still developing, put it that way. Yeah.
Well, if there's anything we can ever do for you, Ben, it would be a pleasure. If you ever come to Singapore, you got to come have a drink with us. Got to have a Negroni over there, and if come to London, I'll let's do the same thing. We'll find your local, and we'll go do that as well. Right?
Absolutely. Sounds great.
Ben, thank you very much for everything. Congratulations on Watch Bros London, and it's an absolute pleasure talking to you, my friend.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and have a wonderful evening, and I'll hopefully catch you all soon.
Yours. Thank you.